Hello and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this episode of the Drive Game series, we're talking about, does my dog need to be toy focused to have good drive? So I have got various dogs and some of them are into their toys and some of them not. Swift is, get it. Swift is my dog that's into toys, but I have had to work really hard at it. Good girl, for her to tug. I couldn't get this to happen with Sparrow, right? Now, I have worked lots of value into toys with her by playing little short games of tug. Yeah, girl. Okay. And out. Ready. And getting her to power into the toy. Ready. Get it. Okay. Which helps with drive. However, it's not the be-all and end-all. I have worked hard with this, and if I'm running ahead of her, I can get her to chase me and grab a toy. But I tell you what, I'll show you something. So you just saw that when I've got a toy there, she'll come and she'll get into it. That's good. Okay, and out. Can I have it? Out. Good girl. What if I put it there? Get it. Not too bad, but she's not giving me the full-on drive that she can do, so we still have to use food rewards with her, because that's our good thing, food rewards. So what I want to talk to you about is just if your dog is not massively into their toys, it doesn't mean you can't have drive. Sparrow, hello Sparrow, is hugely driven. She won't tug. There's no way she'll do this. She's more driven than Swift. Swift, okay. And sit. That'd be a down. And sit. Okay. Get it. But she wouldn't do this. But she is still hugely driven. So let's break down the myth. We do not need to have toy drive to be a hugely driven dog. But it is something that helps us to build a little bit more excitement. So if you can start to work on a bit of tugging with your dog, then it will be good for you. It means also that she'll chase me. Can I have that out? With the toy, I can get her to chase and tug. And I do see a little bit more speed with Swift when she's coming out of something, if she's got the toy to drive to, with me holding it. But that means I have to be ahead, and when I'm trying to teach drive, I don't necessarily want to be ahead. So let's talk about other ways we can get our dogs to drive. Obviously, we've got treat balls. Now for Sparrow, this is a huge drive object. You know, she'll just drive for anything that. She loves this. If your dog was not too sure about a toy like that has got a treat in it and they've got to open it, you know, it might be they don't know how to open it, or, you know, they just might be a bit more sensitive and soft and don't want to. What you could actually do, you could have a food bowl out there and put food in it and have your dog drive to an open food bowl. Really easy to pick them up. If that's what they want, if they want food, that's fine. The other item I've got, and I have to say this has been quite a game changer for me, it's my treat and train. There are other versions of treat dispenser out there. I like my treat and train though. And I found that with Swift, though it's still the same concept, you know, you're still running out to food, it takes her up a level. I'm not sure exactly why, whether it's because of the noise it makes when it dispenses, I don't know why, but it's still food, and actually the food in here is slightly lower value than what I would put in the toy. But that makes her drive harder. So, and I've heard other people say this with low drive dogs, by using their treat and train, they've actually got higher drive in them. So if you've got a food orientated dog, the treat and train is definitely a good device to have to help build drive. It also means that you can have it out there because it's got a long range remote, and you can be back there and you haven't got to be constantly going back and forth filling up refilling the toy with food. It means gives you a bit less work to do. So I use this especially when I'm training running contacts and weaves. It's brilliant for that. the most important thing when you're picking your reward for your drive games is you pick what your dog loves the most. Sometimes we pick things that are not necessarily our dog's favourite, but that work better for us. What do I mean by that? Supposing your dog really, really loves the tennis ball, but once it's got the tennis ball, it does circuits around the field and you can't get it back. So you say, well, I don't want to put the tennis ball out because that makes my life harder. I'll put out something that's a little bit less value, perhaps a food toy. The problem with that is you're not going to be getting the best drive out of your dog because you want them to be powering out to their best reward. It's a bit like having a £50 note out in the street running towards and getting it compared to a £1 coin. You're going to push yourself a little bit harder to get to the £50 note than you are to get to the £1 coin, especially if there's other people around to do it. You know, it's that level of value. So just because your dog is hard work to get the tennis ball back from, that needs to be the reward you've got to go to. That's you've got to be a high value go-to reward to get best drive out of your dog. And you know, that's something you're going to have to work on to get the tennis ball back. There are various ways you can do that. But that's what we do sometimes. We go, oh, it's hard work to the highest value reward, it's hard work, so we'll go with something less value. And we're not really achieving anything that way. The same applies where what happens is people say, well, I want a dog that powers out to a toy and I only want to reward with toys. I don't want to reward with food. So they refuse to reward with food because there's this thing in some people's head that if you reward with food, you won't get the best out of your dog. It's not as good as a tug toy or whatever. And then what happens is that the dog doesn't power out as well to that toy as it would food, so you still don't get the best drive. You know, and what are you achieving that way? You know, you have to work with your dog. You have to ask yourself, what does my dog like? I mean, you could ask me, what do I like? You know, what would be my ideal thing to run out to if there was a reward there? Would it be a food or a toy? You know, supposing it was, you know, talking in human terms, it was a cake, or what would I like as a toy? A PlayStation, right? Which one of those would I run out the most to? I'm going to say probably cake. The PlayStation, I mean, they're close, but cake. And, you know, it's just that little bit that, you know, we're talking nuances here. Drive is nuance. You know, it's that little bit extra, taking it up to that next level. So you always work with what your dog loves best, and you accept that maybe, you know, they're not as good on their toy drive as other dogs are. You can work on that. I have worked on it with Swift. You just saw me do that. She still wants that food reward best. You know, she likes her tug toy, and that's a good way of getting us to work together. She still wants food best. That is something I'm going to carry on working with, but I'm going to also accept her for who she is and say, right, you want food. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you about is the placement of your toy, and this is where people fall down so often. So if we're using something like a dead toy, like the treat and train, that's fairly straightforward in terms of where you're going to put it. I would always aim to be, this is a bit close, but I would always aim to be about 5 meters from a jump, so I want to be over there. The reason being, I don't want my dog to come to this jump and go, oh, the treat and train is there, I'll slow down so I can get to it. I didn't achieve anything on that, did I? So what I want my dog to do is the treat and train is over there, I've got to power over this jump as hard as possible so I can get to that treat and train or toy or whatever. So you do not have your reward close to the jump because that's going to slow them, or tunnel, because that is going to slow them down. And just think about this. You're rewarding what happens last. Okay, we are back training something. So we're, in the terms of the jumps, we're back training these jumps, but we are still rewarding the last thing that happened. So if you've put the toy there over and over again, so that as your dog powers over those two, it goes short on this one, guess what you get? You get a dog that learns that when it gets to the last jump, it slows down to get its reward. That is defeating the purpose of drive. So what we need is we need our dogs to learn that they have to power over this last jump to get the reward. So if you're placing something on the ground, it needs to be far enough out that your dog has still got to jump this an extension or run extension. Same with anything, if it's a weave poles or a tunnel. If you're working on drive, then you need to make sure that reward is far enough out that the dog is powering out towards it. Very important, they power into the obstacle, they power out. If you're training a skill, you might have the reward closer, but we're not. We're training that drive, that run. They're running through everything. Another thing I want to talk about is throwing your toy. So sometimes when we're running, we don't want the toy out there, especially as we get better at our drive. We don't always want our dog to be driving to a item, because obviously in competition there won't be an item. So sometimes we're going to have the reward on us and we'll be throwing it in. The thing with throwing it in is your timing is critical. It's worse to throw too late than too early. If you throw too early, all you're really messing up is the fact that the toy was probably already out there and on the ground before the dog had finished. So they're not necessarily powering on their own. They're still going to a lure, if you like. Occasionally, if you throw a toy too soon, the dog may mess up the last obstacle because they're looking at the toy. So it could be they take a jump, they miss a weave pole. So throwing too early can be a problem, but throwing too late is your real issue when it comes to drive. Because what happens, you throw late and the dog comes out and it looks up or it looks to the side to see where the toy is coming from. And so now you've got the dog, instead of coming over this jump and going straight, they're coming over going, where's my toy? Have you thrown it? Yeah, is it coming? So again, what did we reward last? The last thing we rewarded was the dog looking up or the dog looking behind. We so do not want our dog looking behind. When our dog is driving forward, we do not want them looking to see what we're doing. We want them to be driving to something. So if you are having real problems with your timing on a thrown toy, then you might have to go back to placing a toy on the ground or the treat and train, or you're just going to have to really work on that timing. We're not going to be perfect all the time, but you really need to work on it so that the toy throws out down on the ground. Now, this also becomes a little bit dependent on the dog. Sparrow is worse for this than Swift. Swift will actually power on ahead even when there isn't a toy sometimes, not always, if she's in the mood. Sparrow, though, is always looking for that reward. So if she comes out of a tunnel, there's no reward there, then she's going to start looking at me and looking back, and I don't want that. So again, if you're having that problem, then the best thing to do is to keep the toy on the ground or throw in a little bit earlier. So timing, so you know when you're placing that toy, so you know what your dog is doing at that moment when it gets rewarded. You need to be very careful about this end behavior so that we don't end up rewarding an end behavior that is counterproductive to drive. I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video. If you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon.